moderator for Alan, who's right next to me, pricing your products for maximum return. Alan Albert has led the creation of multiple top-selling and award-winning products, generating over $1 billion in revenue. He has co-founded 3 software companies, selling 1 FileMaker Pro to Apple Computer. Alan draws over 30 years of managerial, advisory, and hands-on success in bringing innovative products to market, serving in organizations ranging from startups through Fortune 500 enterprises. Alan now leads MarketFit, providing customer-centric strategy and business coaching to growing B2B and B2C product and service organizations across a wide range of markets. And it sounds like today you're presenting from Vancouver, Canada, and super excited for your presentation. Thanks for being here with us. And with that, I'll leave it to you.
Well, thank you. Thanks a lot, Josh. Appreciate the warm introduction. It's great to be here at Product Camp. I love Product Camps. They're a great opportunity to learn and to share and to connect. And I'm very happy to be here. So we're going to talk today about pricing your products for maximum return. I hope you come away with some thoughts at the end that you don't have now about pricing. It's a topic that I used to think was not particularly interesting, but now I think it's one of the most fascinating aspects of managing products. So I'm going to start off with a question for you. How much do you pay for a cup of coffee? I'm going to run through some scenarios, and I'd like you to keep in mind what is the lowest amount that you would pay for that cup of coffee, and what is the most that you would pay for that cup of coffee. So how much would you pay for organic coffee? For coffee with steamed milk? With steamed milk and fancy latte art? For a tasting, sampling, and educational tour of the finest coffees in the world? For barrel-aged 25-year-old Japanese coffee? For coffee that you can make in an instant? When you're buying coffee for someone in need? When you're getting coffee from a machine like this? Or getting your own coffee at a free conference like Product Camp? So if you can type into the chat window, what is the most and the least amount that you'd be willing to pay for the lowest priced coffee and for the most expensive? I'd like to see what range of prices you have. Please type those into the chat window. When you look at particular companies' product lines, you'll notice that there is a decent range between their lowest priced offering of a particular type of product, here in this case, a cup of coffee, and the most expensive. And here it's a bit over 3 to 1. And I'm curious for you, for your product, the one that you were most closely managing or involved in growing, what is the ratio of the lowest price that a product in that product line sells for and the highest price? And how does that compare? So if you can type that in your range. Now, for product categories, like a cup of coffee, typical price ranges across different companies range from about 10 to 1 to 100 to 1, sometimes even 1,000 to 1. Here, the ratio of what some people pay for a cup of coffee, for that Japanese barrel-aged coffee, compared to the price of pennies a cup for instant coffee, that's well over 1,000 to 1, well over. The point here, and I want to quote someone who knows a bit about pricing. Warren Buffett says that the single most important decision in evaluating a business is pricing power, the ability to set a price or a range of prices. And one way of evaluating the range of prices, your pricing power, is the range that your company can serve, from serving those who are least willing and able to pay to those most willing and able to pay. So the wider your range, typically the stronger your pricing power and the stronger your product. What I'd like to do is to encourage you, when you're pricing your own products, to use your full range. And I found a couple of quotes here. I wasn't sure which one was the stronger quote, so I included both. But the essence is you've got a lot of power, and most people who are involved in pricing their products don't use their full pricing power. And I'd like to give some ideas of ways that you can do that in today's session. Pricing may actually be your most powerful tool in managing products, more so than many other things that you can do within an entire company. A 1% improvement in your pricing model can have a greater impact than improving any other aspect of the business. Pretty powerful. Most companies, when it comes to pricing, pick a price, set it, and forget it. But there's substantial data that shows that companies that more frequently optimize their pricing actually generate more revenue. So, in fact, many are doing this kind of thing quarterly, adjusting their pricing every single quarter. Another missed opportunity that many companies encounter is they don't do any pricing research. The vast majority do little to none, and it's the elite that do any pricing research at all. So there's an opportunity to become among the elite. Here's an array of the ways that pricing is typically set in companies. Most take a look at what the competition is doing and pick something either slightly above or slightly below that. Some base their prices on the cost of building the product, developing it, manufacturing it, bringing it to market, and then add some margin on top of that. Some companies ask their customers, "Hey, what would you pay?" And a surprising number, just guess. Let's take a look at each of those, because none of those, I believe, is the best way to set your pricing. When you follow your competition, you're the follower and they're the leader. You're giving up control to them. And given that so few companies conduct their own pricing research, they likely don't know either. When you're basing your pricing on your costs, you're actually minimizing the amount of money that you can charge. There are better ways. Asking your customers for what they would pay puts you at their mercy. No customer is going to say, "Please charge me more." And for companies that are guessing, I'm not even sure why anyone would want to do that. More importantly, suboptimal pricing is really risky. It's important to optimize your pricing, because if you don't have that revenue coming in, your company is not going to have the money to continue to innovate, to market effectively, and to deliver even greater in the value in the future. You need this to sustain your business. So if pricing is so important, how can we do better? Here's what we're going to talk about today. We just talked about how pricing is actually your untapped superpower. We can all do better. Now I'm going to talk about the connection between pricing and value. Turning back to our friend Warren Buffett here, he says, "Price is what you pay, value is what you get." So where exactly does value come from? I've been doing a lot of thinking about this and working with a lot of different companies, B2B, B2C, products and services, small and large. And I'm really curious about this topic of value. So here's a thought experiment. In this situation, where is the value coming from? Here we've got two people who are experiencing the same product, the same experience. They paid the same price for their seat, and yet they're having a completely different perception of value. So if one product has two perceptions of value, where is the value coming from? It can't be the product. The product's staying the same. I'd encourage you to consider the possibility that value comes from your customers. They bring value to their product. If they don't value your product has no value. If they don't care about it, they don't want it, it has no value to them. If no customers want your product has no value. Which then leads us to an alternative definition of what a market segment is. Most companies define a market segment by demographics, the age, the gender, the location, or for B2B, what kind of industry it's in, what kind of role the person they're selling to is in, etc. But I'd encourage you to think of a market segment as a group of customers who share the same perception of value, even if their gender is different, even if they're from a different location, even if they're in a different industry. If we care about the same things, we care about the same things, and we're likely to buy the same things. So what exactly is value? Value, as I see it, is what a product or service is worth from the customer's perspective. And it's not just how I see it. Others see it this way as well. But this means that to price your products effectively, you need to understand and to really deeply understand the value of your product or service from your customer's perspective, not your own perspective. In fact, Peter Drucker, famous management consultant, brilliant person in business, said that the customer rarely buys what the business thinks it's selling. Our own perception of value when we're building products is actually irrelevant. But once you do understand your customer's perception of value, you can do something really powerful, not just with pricing, but you can align and optimize your product and your innovations, your marketing and communications, and your pricing to deliver maximum value to the people according to their perception of value and not your own. And that can be pretty powerful all across an organization. So we've covered the first two topics here. The next one will be pretty quick, but I'd like you to understand that pricing is more than just a number. How much should I charge? The price is only a small part, and there's a lot of pieces that you can play around with. This is more than just the tip of the iceberg, or there's more iceberg below the surface. And I'm not going to go into all of these. It's way too deep a topic to go into. But for future reference, these are some of the things that we can play around with when we're optimizing our pricing. Pricing models themselves are a great opportunity for you to innovate and gain a competitive advantage. And that doesn't come by picking a different number. It comes by looking at the pricing model itself. I'd like to give you some examples here. Amazon Prime. When that came out, it was a bold move right before the Christmas selling season. But they said, you pay for a year's worth of shipping and you won't pay for the shipping of anything. And it generated a phenomenal amount of revenue across a broad range of products for Amazon, and they continue to thrive on that today. Netflix. This is prior to streaming. This is back when they were actually selling DVDs and CDs, and they offered an all-you-can-eat plan. Totally devastated Blockbuster. And Slack has a great pricing model. The product is free. If you want access to your old messages, then you can pay, but you can keep on using it for as long as you want. And if your company is paying and one of your employees stops using it, you don't pay for that person. You don't have to cancel the subscription. They just simply automate that and you don't pay, and that helps build trust. So these are three examples of very innovative pricing models that have really done a good job at advancing the product relative to the competition. So now I'd like to outline 7 steps to value-based pricing. Before we do that, we need to actually define value-based pricing, and that's different than some of the others. In value-based pricing, we're aligning the amount you charge with the amount of value that your customer is actually perceiving. Okay, so you need to know that value-based pricing typically is far better than competition-based pricing, cost-plus pricing, asking your customers, guessing, or any other method. And it doesn't mean that it generates a higher number. It means it generates a more accurate number. Customers perceive that they're paying for the value that they are receiving. So here are the 7 steps, and we're going to go through these. The most important point here is to start at the top. And this is a common mistake that many companies do, and there's a lot of encouragement to do this out in the industry. But most companies start at the bottom without doing the groundwork needed to succeed. And this results in suboptimal pricing and wasting a lot of time, ending up with a number that really is off target. So if you do nothing else, start at the top. And so we'll go through these starting with number 1. From the beginning, you want to have your entire organization agree on your pricing strategy. I've worked with a number of companies on pricing, and it's amazing. I've seen the sales department working on maximizing revenue while the marketing department is focusing on market share. They're fighting each other. They both think they're doing the best thing, but without that coordination, they're rowing in opposite directions. So make sure that before you develop a pricing model, everyone in the organization believes in this same pricing strategy. It's worth noting that higher prices are not necessarily better prices. Jeff Bezos at Amazon says there are 2 kinds of companies, those that want to charge more and those that want to charge less. And they want to be the second. And I would say they've done pretty well with that strategy. There's no one size fits all here. It's important to align the strategy with where you are in the market. Step number 2, always do research. Always be researching to discover your customer's perception of value. If you don't understand that, you're going to get it wrong. And if you're wrong, your pricing model will be wrong and your product will be less successful than it can be. Next step is to determine the key metrics. And there are 2 terms that you need to understand in order to align your pricing with your customer's perception of value. We're going to run through these. One is the value metric, and the other is the pricing metric. Value metrics are the units by which a customer measures value, how much value they are getting from a particular product or services. And this applies B2B or B2C, product, services, across the board. For physical products, there are often things like resolution, capacity, comfort, or dozens more. In software, we often see value metrics aligned with number of transactions, number of leads, how engaged people are, or many other possibilities. And in either of those kinds of categories, there are often more ephemeral value metrics that may not be easily measured, but still correlate with the amount of value that someone is perceiving, such as closer relationships, reduced risk, more fun. Hard to quantify, but people know it when they're getting more. The pricing metric is the unit by which you determine the price. So when you're choosing your pricing metrics, you want to choose ones that best align with the top value metrics that your customers are perceiving, the way they measure the amount of value they're getting. So value metrics, just to summarize, come from researching your customers. Pricing metrics present opportunities to innovate. Some examples here, we're not going to go into this in detail, but for example, Toyota and most cars likely have value metrics aligned with performance, comfort, luxury, and safety. And those are reflected in the pricing that's based upon a base model that you buy. You can perhaps up the engine power and pay more for particular feature bundles that provide more luxury or more safety. I'll skip over Google AdWords. Rolls-Royce aircraft engines used to be sold, really expensive capital purchase. They switched to charging per hour that the engine was in use. So the airlines did not pay when the engine was not running. Had a huge impact on their success. So value-based pricing can give you a strong competitive advantage. Step 4, you want to segment your market for maximum return. And this is because different market segments, as we've seen before, have different perceptions of what's most valuable. They also perceive different amounts of value from the same product. And this means that they likely have different value metrics. So if you want to maximize the return for your entire product, identify the best metrics for each segment and develop pricing for each. They may not be the same. So we've covered the first 4 here, and unfortunately, we're not going to have time to go over the last step. We'll do that another day. But there is a lot of information online for steps 5, 6, and 7. I focused on 1 through 4 because they are less commonly addressed, and they're a lot of fun to work with, and you can do so much with those. So now we're on to the last part about pricing for maximum return. Recapping, you want to make sure that you're using the full range of your pricing power. The broader your range, the broader the broader the range of market that you can address. You can serve people who can only afford to pay a little bit, and you can also serve people who are willing to pay a whole lot more than you might even think. So expand your range and expand your market share simply by changing your pricing model. To price your products for maximum return, start with the pricing strategy. Get everyone aligned. And then before you go further, make sure you know what your customers actually value most. Do not guess. Discover what their value metrics are, and based upon that, select the best pricing metrics to track those value metrics. Identify which segments perceive the most value. And from there, you can then identify the right prices for each segment. Really important here, you do not have to guess. Most companies guess or do things based upon their competitors. There are much better ways. All of this is knowable. What your customers value most, what are their value metrics, the best pricing metrics, the most valuable segments to target, and even what are the right prices. You can get a really good idea by conducting your research. These are all knowable, and they all depend upon your customer's perception of value. Customer perception of value can be discovered and measured qualitatively and quantitatively so that you have far more pricing power than you've had before. So do your research, talk to your customers. You're not going to find the right pricing model by sitting at your desk or talking with your coworkers. The information is out in the market with your customers. The value is inside them. You can go and discover that by speaking with them. So, what is the value of a cup of coffee? Well, if you're having coffee with your customers to discover their values, then I would say the value of that cup of coffee is priceless. Thank you.
Alan, thank you so much for that presentation. Well delivered and fascinating. Folks, I think we were all pretty engaged and didn't type in too many questions into the chat bar, so feel free to plug those in. And to get it started, Alan, I was curious if you have an example of a great way to find out what your customer values.
Sure, that's a really great question, and I welcome many more questions. That particular question, how do you discover what your customers value, is a fascinating topic. I often speak on that topic as well. Not enough time to put both of those into a single presentation, but I'll try and cover that briefly here. The perception of value exists within your customer, and it does not exist within your product. So that means to discover the value of your product, you don't need your product in order to discover it. You don't need a product idea. You don't need a prototype, a mock-up, a description of it. You don't even need an idea of what your solution is. You can measure the value of there being a solution by talking to your customers, not about the features, not about the product, but about them and what they care about in the situation that your product is going to be serving. As a thought experiment, consider a product that you recently bought. And then imagine describing that to someone without mentioning what the product is, what it does, any of its particular features. Just describe the context that it's used in and the value that you get from using it. If you can describe something that way, you're getting closer to the idea of what is value. You can then walk through supermarket shelves and look at What is the value of
Hmm.
this particular granola bar versus that particular granola bar? When I go to the supermarket, to me, it's like a museum of value, and every product is communicating the value that it delivers and differentiating it from its competitors. You can do the same thing, but just guessing is not the best way to do that.
Yeah.
You can talk to your customers and ask them not about the products and features, but about them. They love to talk about themselves too.
Awesome. Thank you. Looks like we've got a question from Jay over in the Q&A. He says, if I lower price as I scale to grow my market, do customers that paid more in the past understand that they had the value of being first? And he's got uvsaba.com.
So just make sure I understand the question. Do customers who pay more upfront understand that they're getting more value? Is that the heart of the question?
I guess it's saying, do they perhaps that they got to use it for longer? They had the value of being first?
Yes. So yes, sometimes, and no, sometimes. It depends, and that is discoverable by talking to them and learning from them what they value. So the value of it doesn't come from you saying, "Oh no, it's important because we did it." Our own opinion doesn't matter, and it's a humbling experience to be a product manager and realize that one's own opinion doesn't matter. But in this case, the customer is always right. And in fact, there are pricing strategies that are designed around the two sides of this concept. Some companies, when they introduce a new product, they will do what's called price skimming, and they'll charge a high price upon introduction and get those who are most willing to pay to buy first, and then gradually lower the price over time. You see this in a lot of products, particularly consumer products. But the opposite strategy is also used quite frequently, where in order to gain attention, companies come out with a low introductory price, and then as they build up market share and increase the power of their product, they gradually increase the price. Either one is okay, but trying to convince your customers is usually a losing battle. Education is expensive.
Dave has another related question here in the Q&A. What is advice for anticipating declining value over time? So certainly related to this first one, along with expectation/perception of internally often having an inverse perception.
Yeah. What's fun about pricing is that there's so many complex interactions, and when you're anticipating your product decreasing in value over time, that may not mean that your product is getting worse. It may be that customers' perception of value is shifting. When you think, for example, of times when disruptive products have been introduced, they're not just randomly growing their market share. Disruptive products are attention-getting because they provide value in a different dimension than what was previously accepted as the standard. The first digital cameras were worse in every single dimension than film cameras. Unless, of course, you wanted to get your picture on the internet, in which case it was pretty much the only game in town. So different perception of what was valued reduced the value of film cameras. So in that declining market, what do you do? Well, one option is to conduct your research, figure out what people do value. Are values increasing or decreasing along the lines of what your product is currently delivering? You're not stuck that way. You can change. Kodak had the opportunity to develop digital cameras. They thought that they weren't going to be as good. They were wrong. So taking off our product is the right way, customers just don't get it. Taking off that hat and putting on our customers are always right. What do they value and what can we do that will align with their perception of value can give you cues as to how to best price your products. I'll also mention that strategy also plays a key role. Are you retiring that product, or do you want it to continue? Do you want to grow market share? Do you want to treat it as a cash cow? Start with that, and then do your research to inform how to best achieve that objective.
Awesome. Alan, we've hit our 30-minute mark. There's some other questions, and there was super engaging presentation that you gave, really smooth, super digestible, and I also feel like a lot of information. I was taking tons of notes throughout. So thank you so much for joining us today and presenting. And I look forward to...
Thanks to you, Josh, and thanks to the attendees. I love questions. I love discussing pricing and any topics related to value with anybody. Happy to connect here or after the event.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you again, Alan. Thanks everybody for joining, and see you around Product Camp.